Hello, namaste. Welcome back to Bhagavatam for Rationalists. My name is Kamalakar Gulukota. In this web series, we are covering Bhagavatam over the course of 7 days. This is episode 3. In this, we are going to talk about Emperor Parikshit. So, all of the Pandavas and their heirs, as well as everyone on the Kaurava side, died in the war at Kurukshetra, but Parikshit survived. This happened because the five Pandavas, the middle one of the five Pandavas was Arjuna, and Arjuna was married to Subhadra. Subhadra was Krishna's sister. Krishna helped the Pandavas in the war. Specifically, he was the charioteer. He drove Arjuna's war chariot. And he was also his brother in law because Subhadra, Arjuna's wife, was Krishna's sister. So Arjuna and Subhadra had a son who was Abhimanyu. He went to war and fought in the war and he died. But at the time of the war, Uttara was pregnant. Uttara was Abhimanyu's wife, and she delivered right after the war. And Parikshit was born after the war. That's why he never took part in the war and was not killed in it. So from the birth of Parikshit, we are going to fast forward about 15 years when Arjuna comes back from Krishna's town Dwaraka and brings terrible news that Lord Krishna has in fact died. He has passed away. So it is often said that Bhagavatam begins with Krishna's death and ends also with Krishna's death. And this is what they mean that at the very beginning of the story, there is the news that Lord Krishna has passed away. And here is how Arjuna describes Krishna's death. మనసారథి మనసచివుడు మన వియ్యము మనసఖుండు మన బాంధవుడున్ మన విభుడు గురుడు దేవర మనలను దిగనాడి చనియ మనుజాధీశ. So Arjuna is saying this in open court in front of Yudhishthir. He is addressing Manujadhisha or O leader of men to his own brother. He's using a very formal term, Manujadhisha. And that's just not for rhyming with the mana that you're seeing everywhere, like Manasarati, Manasachivudu, and so on. So he's saying our charioteer, our counselor, our in law, our best friend, close relative, Lord, Guru, and God has dropped us and gone, O leader of men. Now, there are a couple of things to observe here. The first is Arjuna is calling him Manasarathi, but we know that Krishna was charioteer to Arjuna, to no one else. So when he's telling the whole assemblage, the full court, and he's telling them he was our charioteer, our counselor, our in law. Well, it was only in law to Arjuna, not to everyone else. And yet he's saying that. What does that mean? It means that Arjuna is standing in as a representative for all humanity. And he's saying for the humanity, for the entire humanity, Krishna is in fact the charioteer. So next time you're on a bus and you're going somewhere, see God in the driver of the bus. When you get good advice from someone, see God in the person who is your counselor, who's giving you advice. See God in your best friends, in your close relatives. So there is a message here telling us to see God in everyone that we see around us, right? And then formally calling him Manujadhisha or leader of men also has this emphasis that as a representative of men, I would like to tell the leader of men that our Lord, Savior, and God has dropped us and gone. And finally, Diganadichaniye means dropped us and gone. Why is Potana having Arjuna say Diganadichaniye instead of say Vidanadichaniye? Vidanadichaniye would mean left us and gone. But the idea here is that Krishna is never actually truly gone. You keep him in your heart. He has just dropped you off like a parent drops someone off at school. He is always going to be there in case there is any trouble. That is the message that Arjuna is trying to give to the entire assemblage that is there. So, this is poem number 358 in the first skanda or first canto. And whenever I show the original poems, I'm going to include the reference like so. And we might not have time to discuss every poem in this much detail, but there are layers upon layers of meaning in all the poems that Potana writes. And therefore, I would like to at least give you a flavor of some of them. So, um, when this news comes in that Lord Krishna has passed away, Pandavas now want to say, okay, our job on the world is also done, and they would like to go to heaven. Now, these Pandavas, the five brothers, as well as their wife Draupadi, have had dozens upon dozens of great adventures that are colorfully described in Mahabharatam. So they decide to go on one last great adventure, and that is to go to heaven. But this time they want to go with their mortal coil. Most people go to heaven after they die, but these six, they want to go with their body intact. Bondito Swarganiki, they say. So, with their mortal coil intact, they would like to go to heaven. That's a great big adventure called Mahaprasthanam, and that's described in Mahabharata. We are, of course, not covering Bharatam. Let's stay back in the city of Hastinapur, where Pandavas, before they left, have done the coronation of young Parikshit. Parikshit is now king. He's only a teenager, but he becomes king. And we're going to follow Parikshit's story. So let's fast forward another 20 or so years. Parikshit by now is in his mid 30s. He has grown into his role beautifully. He's known the world over as the emperor who protects justice. He's at the peak of his political power. He's also married. The eldest of his sons is himself a teenager. His name is Prince Janamejaya. So, in this situation, Parikshit once goes to on a hunt. He, of course, has an entourage with him of staff. They all go to the forest and they are doing their hunt. And in the excitement of the hunt, Parikshit gets separated from his entourage and gets lost in the forest for a few hours. As he's running around, he gets very thirsty on a hot summer day and he sees Rishi Shamika sitting in front of his ashram in deep meditation. So he goes up to the Maharishi and requests for some water and says, please, may I have some water, Maharishi? Of course, the Rishi, Shamika, he is in deep penance, in deep meditation. He barely even hears the question, let alone respond to it or get up and get some water. So Parikshit is, of course, completely angered by this lack of response. He thinks, come on, this is my kingdom. This is my subject, this Rishi. I give them financial help. I give them support and help from my army. It's my strength, really, that is sustaining them. And when I have such a simple request for a glass of water, this Rishi cannot be bothered to even answer. He's extremely furious about this. So he sees on the side of the road that there is a big dead snake. He picks up that dead snake and puts it around the Rishi's neck like a garland. It says, that'll teach him some respect. What you see in the side here is a picture from Amar Chitrakatha comic books. This is the beginning, in the beginning of when comic books were first getting published. Of course, like I said, whenever a new medium comes about, artists feel the urge to retell the stories of Bhagavatam, and that's what you see here. This picture from an Amar Chitrakatha comic book depicts Emperor Parikshit putting a dead snake around the neck of Rishi Shamika. So, Shamika's son Shringi, he is of course himself a great penant. He has an enormous penance power. That doesn't mean he has too much wisdom. He just has the power. He hears about this and he's furious at the king. How dare he come and insult my father? He was in deep meditation, could not have answered, and therefore he does this. and he's angry at the king and therefore curses him. O Emperor Parikshit, you will die by the bite of a snake called Takshaka within 7 days. That's what Shringi gives as the curse. Now, Parikshit, of course, finds his entourage again, goes back to the palace, and he thinks about his own behavior and he repents. He sees the arrogance that grew in him, the fury that grew in him upon the Rishi's lack of response, and he says, no, that's not right. I should not be like this, especially when I have all this much political power. I should not be so quick to anger. And therefore, he says, I need a break. So he retreats from everything and goes to a forest. సుతుల హితుల విడిచి చుట్టాల విడిచి ఇల్లాలి విడిచి బహుబలాళి విడిచి రాజు హృదయమిడియ రాజీవనయనుపై ధనము విడిచి జడ్డు ధనము విడిచి. So, what this is describing is that he left his children, his well wishers, his relatives, his wife, his formidable army. He left them all behind, and the king concentrated his heart on God after having left behind his immense wealth and the greasiness of his heart. So the greasiness or the dirt in your heart comes from all these things, from wealth, from having a formidable army, from having well-wishers who always agree with you, and so on and so forth. So all of these belongings cause us to have arrogance and anger and pride. So he left all that behind and went to the forest. In the forest, he met with Maharshi Shuka and asked the exact same question that Shaunaka had asked Suta. How does one attain salvation? So, as you know, we said Suta's speech is what encapsulate the entire Bhagavatam, and within that speech now we have the narration of the dialogue between Parikshit and Shuka. This dialogue between Parikshit and Shuka goes on for 7 days because Parikshit, of course, has 7 days before the snake is going to kill him. Over that week, Shuka narrates Bhagavatam, and that's the first what was called Bhagavata Saptaham. As an homage to that tradition, to this day, the tradition continues in many communities that when someone passes away, when someone dies, within the first year of that death, they perform a Bhagavata Saptaham where someone is invited to come and narrate Bhagavatam over a whole week. And this web series is also a tip of the hat of an homage to the same tradition. That is why I'm going to release 7 episodes every day over the next 7 days to cover Bhagavatam. So Parikshit first tells Shuka first tells Parikshit, saying, "You already have a history with Krishna. There was a warrior on the Kauravas side called Ashwatthama, who at the end of the war, after the Kauravas had completely lost, tried to make the Pandavas also lose everything by killing the last possible heir they had, and that is you, Emperor Parikshit. You were still in your mother's womb, and Ashwatthama tried to cause an abortion in your mother Uttara. But Krishna protected you. So Krishna protected fetus Parikshit, and Shuka tells him you can attain salvation by learning the story of Krishna. He saved your physical life before when he prevented the abortion from happening, and his story can save your immortal soul now. And so this becomes a nested conversation. Suta's speech contains the narration of the dialogue between Parikshit and Shuka, and within that dialogue are a number of other dialogues like Brahma, Narada, Vidura, Uddhava, and so forth. So all of these nested conversations are included in the Bhagavatam, and it keeps jumping back and forth between these. And that's the reason I said I reorganize it, and I'm going to tell it like a story rather than follow the Bhagavatam page by page. Anyway, Shuka narrated the story of Krishna over the next week in the Bhagavata Saptaham. We are going to start that in the next episode. I hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your attention so far.